Hello, I'm Reggie. My father kicked me out to teach me a lesson, but what he didn't expect was that I would expose his darkest secrets. He took everything from me, but the worst part? His lies didn't just ruin my life, they destroyed the family I knew. Now, his empire is falling apart, but is it really over for me? The truth is only beginning to surface. I sat alone in the dimly lit room, the sound of my father's angry words echoing in my mind like a broken record. The California sun streamed through the blinds, casting a long shadow across the floor. It felt like everything had come to a halt, and the world outside was moving at a pace too fast for me to keep up with. For 34 years, I had fought for his approval, chasing a love that seemed to slip through my fingers like sand. My father, Herman, was always there, but always just out of reach. He'd shown me affection in moments, but there was always something cold behind his gaze, a reminder that no matter what I did, it was never enough. I grew up in a home where his approval was the currency. My actions, my successes, my failures, everything was measured against his expectations, and no matter how hard I tried, it felt like I was always falling short. There were moments when he would praise me, his voice warm and full of love, but those moments were always followed by a cold distance that made me question if it was real. I remembered the time when I was 16 and I had just received an award at school. I ran to him, eager to show him what I had accomplished. He barely looked up from his newspaper, his response distant. "Good job," he muttered, but his eyes never left the page. In that moment, I realized that no matter how hard I tried, he would always see me as something less than what he wanted me to be. I shook my head, pushing the memory aside. I had grown used to his indifference, the constant tug-of-war between wanting to prove myself to him and the realization that it was an impossible fight. Yet, there I was, still trying to make sense of it all. Why was I still chasing a love I would never receive? But today, something had shifted. The past few weeks had been different. The silence between us had grown louder, the tension thicker. My father had become more distant, more cold. It was like he was preparing for something, or maybe he just couldn't be bothered anymore. The ringing of the doorbell broke my thoughts, snapping me back to reality. I walked to the door, my heart beating faster with anticipation. When I opened it, I wasn't prepared for what I saw. Herman stood there, his face as cold as the wind that blew through the cracks in the door. "Pack your things," he said, his voice clipped. "You're leaving." My heart stopped. I stood there staring at him, trying to make sense of his words. "What do you mean? Dad, what's going on?" His eyes flashed with something I couldn't place, something cold and calculated. "It's time for you to learn a lesson. You've been here long enough, and you've done nothing but take from me." His words were sharp, cutting through me like a knife. I opened my mouth to protest, but he cut me off. "Don't argue. Just pack your things. It's for your own good." I could feel the anger rising in my chest, but there was something else too, something deeper. The betrayal, the realization that the man who was supposed to love me unconditionally was now casting me aside like a piece of trash. My father had always been difficult to please, but this was beyond anything I had imagined. The confusion, the pain, it was overwhelming. I didn't know what to say. How could he do this? How could he turn on me like this, after everything I had done for him, everything I had given? Tears welled up in my eyes, but I blinked them away, refusing to let him see my weakness. "I don't understand. Why are you doing this?" "Because you need to learn," he replied, his voice cold and final. "You need to learn that the world doesn't revolve around you. I've given you everything, and this is how you repay me." His words hit me like a punch to the stomach. Everything I had done, all the sacrifices, all the love I had given, nothing mattered to him. I had been nothing more than a disappointment in his eyes. The silence that followed was suffocating. I stood there, my heart pounding, as he turned and walked away without another word. The door slammed behind him, and I was left standing in the hallway, alone. The rain began to pour outside, matching the storm raging inside me. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. For a moment, I was paralyzed by the weight of it all. My father had kicked me out. He had disowned me. I had never felt more abandoned, more alone in my entire life. But then, through the haze of my tears and confusion, something else started to stir within me. A flicker of something, something I hadn't felt in years. Empowerment. I had been cast aside, but I was not going to let this define me. I was stronger than this. As if on cue, I heard the roar of an engine outside. A black truck pulled up in front of the house, its headlights cutting through the rain like a beacon. The door opened, and a man stepped out. I recognized him instantly. Gus, a former mentor of mine, someone who had always been there for me when I needed guidance. He walked up to the porch, his face serious. "I know what happened," he said, his voice low. "And I'm here to help you." I didn't know what to say. Gus had always been there, watching from the sidelines, keeping an eye on things. He was more than just a mentor. He was a friend, someone I could trust. "You've got to be kidding me," I muttered, still in shock. "What do you mean, help me?" Gus didn't waste any time. "Your father's been lying to you, and I've been watching him for a while now. I know what he's been up to, and I can help you expose it." The words hit me like a freight train. I was no longer alone. There was someone on my side, someone who understood what I was going through and who was willing to help me fight back. For the first time in what felt like forever, I felt a spark of hope. Maybe this wasn't the end. Maybe this was the beginning of something else, something bigger. Gus's words echoed in my mind as I began to see a new path in front of me. I wasn't going to let my father's betrayal define me. I had a chance to take back control, to expose the lies and take down the man who had always held me back. I turned to Gus, determination rising within me. "What do we do next?" "First," he said, "we take a long, hard look at your father's financials. He's been hiding things, and it's time to bring it all into the light." I sat across from Gus in his cluttered office, the faint buzz of the fluorescent lights above mingling with the tension in the air. The walls, lined with filing cabinets, were a silent witness to the storm of emotions brewing inside me. Gus had laid out several files in front of me, each one revealing more of my father's deception than I ever thought possible. I picked up the first sheet of paper, my fingers trembling slightly. The numbers jumped out at me, a complicated mess of transfers, accounts, and transactions that made my stomach churn. Gus watched me closely, his expression neutral but his eyes filled with the quiet urgency of someone who had been waiting for this moment far too long. "These are just a few," he said quietly, tapping the stack of documents. "Your father has been hiding a lot more than just money." The words hit me like a slap. My father, the man I'd always looked up to, the man who had raised me, had been lying to me for years. The man who had always told me that family was the most important thing had been pulling strings behind the scenes, manipulating us all for his own gain. I blinked rapidly, my mind struggling to comprehend the enormity of it all. The papers in front of me were full of details I didn't want to read, but I couldn't look away. I could feel my anger rising, each new line of information burning away the last of my illusions. My father had been betraying us, all of us, in ways I couldn't even begin to understand. How could he do this? How could he look me in the eye all those years and pretend everything was fine? "He transferred assets, Reggie," Gus continued, his voice a steady anchor in the storm of my thoughts. "He's been moving money into offshore accounts for years, hiding it from the family, from you, all while pretending to support you and your mother." The weight of his words settled in my chest, a cold, suffocating pressure. I felt a wave of disbelief wash over me. How had I never seen it? How had no one seen it? "How could he?" I began, my voice breaking. "It's a classic move," Gus said, cutting in. "Financial fraud, embezzlement. It's all right here. He's been living a lie for so long that it's almost like a second nature to him." I stared at the pages before me, my mind whirling. My father had lied to us, not just about money, but about everything. The life he had promised us, the security, the love, the stability, had all been a facade. And now that facade was crumbling in front of me. Anger bubbled up inside me, hot and sharp. I wanted to scream, to throw the papers across the room, to punch something, anything. The injustice of it all gnawed at me. I had spent my life trying to make him proud, trying to be what he wanted me to be. And for what? So he could hide his life from me? So he could steal from us all? My hands clenched into fists, my nails digging into my palms. I can't believe it, I muttered. I can't believe he did this. You don't have to believe it, Gus said, his voice firm. The truth is right in front of you. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. The truth. I had never wanted to face it, but now it was inescapable. I had been living in a lie, and it was time to confront it. Time to take back what was mine. Time to stop being the victim. I looked up at Gus, my eyes burning with a mixture of fury and determination. How do we expose him? I asked, my voice shaking but strong. Gus gave a slight nod. It's not going to be easy, but we've got the evidence. We can take it to the authorities or we can take it to the media. Either way, your father's going to pay for what he's done. My heart pounded in my chest, but a new resolve began to take hold. For the first time in years, I wasn't just reacting to my father's control. I was in charge. I was the one holding the cards now. The anger still burned inside me, but it was no longer just blind rage. It was focused, calculated. I was going to make my father pay for what he'd done to me, to my family. He had thought he could control me, but he was wrong. As Gus continued to lay out the details, the gravity of the situation began to sink in. The lies ran deep, and the fight ahead would be long and hard. But I had no choice now. I couldn't walk away, not after everything, not after the betrayal. By the time Gus finished explaining the next steps, I felt like a different person. The Reggie who had walked into this office an hour ago, confused, hurt, desperate, was gone. In her place was someone determined, someone who knew what had to be done. I stood up, the weight of the decision pressing down on me. Let's do it, I said, my voice steady. Let's take him down. The door opened, and I stepped out into the world, no longer afraid. The road ahead was uncertain, but I was no longer the same person I had been. I was ready to fight. I stood outside my father's house, my heart pounding in my chest. The moment I had dreaded and secretly longed for was finally here. The confrontation, the one where I would face the truth, the one where I would expose him. The lies, the betrayal, the decades of manipulation, all of it was about to come out. I could hear the muffled hum of a car engine idling in the driveway as I took a deep breath. There was no going back now. My palms were sweaty, my mind racing. For so many years, I had tiptoed around my father's expectations, trying to earn his love, trying to gain his approval. But today, all that changed. Today, I would finally stand up for myself. No more silence. No more pretending. I knocked on the door, my heart thumping in my throat. It swung open slowly, revealing my father, standing there in his familiar shirt and slacks, his face expressionless. Reggie? He seemed surprised to see me, but his eyes quickly turned cold. What is this? What do you want? The same old coldness, the same icy demeanor. It was like nothing had changed. The years of abuse, the emotional neglect, it was all right there in front of me, in the way he spoke, in the way he looked at me. I stepped inside, shutting the door behind me. We need to talk, I said, my voice steady, despite the nerves swirling inside me. He grunted but didn't say anything. I could tell he was trying to hold on to his composure, trying to maintain control. But I wasn't going to let him. Not this time. I pulled the stack of documents out of my bag and placed them carefully on the coffee table in front of him. His eyes flicked over them, then back to me. You're making a mistake, Reggie, he said quickly, but I could hear the tremor in his voice. This isn't what you think it is. I didn't let him finish. I flipped through the pages, showing him the evidence one by one, the bank statements, the offshore accounts, the money transfers. Every page told a story of deceit, of manipulation, of him hiding his wealth while pretending to support our family. Look at this, Dad, I said, my voice growing firmer with each word. You've been lying to me, to all of us. All these years, I thought you were looking out for us. But you've been taking from us, behind our backs. His face darkened as the truth hit him. You don't understand, he growled, his voice rising. You think you know everything, but you don't. You never have. The anger in his eyes was unmistakable. He was trying to regain control, but the crack in his facade was widening. "No, Dad," I said, my voice steady and cold. "I understand perfectly. You've been playing us all for fools. For years." His face twisted in fury. "You don't know what you're talking about. You have no idea how complicated this all is. This is business, Reggie. It's not as simple as you think." I could feel my hands shaking, not from fear, but from the rage building inside me. And the years of pretending, of hoping for approval, had all led to this moment. And now, I was finally seeing the man for who he truly was: a liar, a manipulator, a coward. "You can deny it all you want," I said, "but the truth is right in front of you. You can't lie your way out of this anymore." His face reddened, his fists clenched at his sides. "You're just like your mother," he spat, stepping toward me. "Always questioning, always looking for something to tear apart. You don't understand anything. You never have. And now you've gone and ruined everything." I didn't back down. I stood there, facing him, the weight of everything I had learned pressing down on me. "You're right about one thing," I said, my voice cold and clear. "I don't understand how you could do this to us, to me, but I'm done letting you control the narrative. The lies stop now." Herman opened his mouth to say something, but I cut him off, not giving him a chance. "I've got the proof, Dad. I know what you've done, and I won't let you get away with it anymore." He stepped back, clearly shaken but refusing to admit his guilt. "This is ridiculous," he muttered. "You've been fed lies. You're just angry. You're being manipulated." I shook my head. "No, I'm not the one being manipulated here. You are. And it's time for the world to know the truth." His expression faltered, just for a moment. I could see the panic in his eyes, but he quickly masked it with anger. "You think you can destroy everything I've built?" he shouted, his voice cracking. "You have no idea what you're doing." I took a deep breath, my mind racing. Part of me wanted to feel sorry for him, but I couldn't. The man who had been my father had long since vanished, replaced by someone I barely recognized. I stood taller, feeling the weight of the decision settling on my shoulders. "I'm not trying to destroy anything, Dad. I'm just trying to fix what you've broken." The silence between us grew thick. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then, in the quiet, I saw something in his eyes, something I hadn't seen in years: vulnerability. He broke, but not in the way I expected. He sighed, a long, drawn-out sound, as if the weight of the world had suddenly fallen on him. "I've made mistakes, Reggie," he said quietly, his voice hollow. "But it wasn't just me. I've been under pressure. You have no idea what I've had to deal with. You don't know the half of it." I felt a cold rush of disappointment. "So now you're blaming everyone else?" He nodded, his shoulders slumped. "I didn't want this. I didn't want any of it. But sometimes you just do what you have to do." I stood there, staring at him, trying to process what I was hearing. Part of me wanted to feel sympathy for him, to understand how deep his lies went. But another part of me was too angry, too betrayed to care. "I don't want to hear it," I said, my voice sharp. "You made your choices, Dad. And now, you'll face the consequences." I turned and walked toward the door, the weight of the confrontation settling into my bones. I knew this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning of a much longer fight. But for the first time in my life, I felt like I was finally in control. The truth had been laid bare, and I wasn't going to let it slip away. As I stepped out of his house and into the cool air, I knew this was just the start. But I was ready. I had no other choice. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the pile of papers in front of me. The evidence was overwhelming. Bank records, transaction history, documents that proved my father had been hiding money for years. The magnitude of it all still felt like a punch to the gut, but as I went through the papers again, I felt a cold resolve building up inside me. This was bigger than just me. It wasn't just about the betrayal, or the lies, or the years of manipulation. It was about reclaiming my life, the life he'd stolen from me by keeping me under his thumb, making me believe that his love and approval were the only things worth chasing. That was over now. I let out a slow breath and stood up. Gus had helped me gather the facts, but it was time to take control. It was time to fight. My father thought he could break me with his abandonment, with his lies. But he was wrong. I wasn't broken. I was stronger than I had ever been. The phone buzzed on the table, breaking my train of thought. "Yeah, it was Gus. Got something for you," he said when I picked up. "Meet me at the office in an hour. I've got an ally who can help." "An ally?" I repeated, a sense of urgency rising in my chest. "Who?" "You'll see when you get here. Just come." I grabbed my keys, slipping them into my bag. My mind was racing with questions, but one thing was clear. I was done waiting. It was time to move, time to make a plan. Gus's office had that quiet, efficient feel. The hum of the air conditioning, the rustle of papers, the low murmur of voices from the hallway. When I walked in, he was standing by a large window, looking out over the city. His face was serious, but there was a glint of something, hope, maybe, in his eyes. "I've got someone who can help," he said as he motioned toward a man sitting at the desk. "This is Robert Fields. He's a lawyer, a damn good one, too." Robert stood up, extending his hand. "It's good to meet you, Reggie," he said with a firm handshake. His suit was sharp, his demeanor calm, but his eyes told a different story, one of determination and experience. "I've been following your situation, and I think I can help," Robert continued, motioning for me to sit down. "This isn't just about the money your father's hiding. It's about the control he's had over your family for years. We're going to take him down, Reggie. Legally, strategically." I felt a knot loosen in my stomach. Legal help. An actual plan. It felt surreal, but at the same time, it was everything I had been waiting for. I was no longer on my own. Robert pulled out a folder, opening it to reveal a set of documents. "We've got the evidence. We just need to move fast. This is about more than just money. It's about taking back control. Your father's not going to like this, but that's exactly why we have to do it." I nodded. "What do we do next?" "Next, we file for a restraining order. We need to disrupt his operations, make it clear that you're no longer under his control. Once we've done that, we move on the financials. But we need to be smart about it. We need to hit him where it hurts, and we need to do it in a way that ensures he can't manipulate the situation anymore." I felt a spark of something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. It was the first real feeling of power I'd had in a long time. For the first time, I wasn't just reacting to the chaos around me. I was taking control. I had a plan. And I wasn't going to stop until I had my freedom. The next few days were a blur of meetings, legal consultations, and the overwhelming task of preparing for what was to come. But no matter how much I prepared, one thing was clear. Herman wasn't going to let this go without a fight. And that fight came sooner than I expected. I was at the grocery store when my phone buzzed with a message from a family member. "You need to hear this," the text read. "Your dad's been telling everyone that you're trying to ruin the family for your own gain. He says you're doing this for money." I felt my blood run cold. I had expected him to deny everything, but this was a full-out attack. He was trying to turn the family against me, painting me as the villain in this story, the same family that had always believed his lies. I gripped my phone tighter, the urge to throw it across the room gnawing at me. But I couldn't let him control this anymore. He wanted a fight. I would give it to him. I called Gus immediately, my voice shaking with anger. "He's spreading lies about me. He's turning everyone against me." "We'll deal with it," Gus said calmly. "But now, it's time for you to get stronger. We've got a plan, Reggie. Stick to it. Don't let him win." It wasn't just about money. It wasn't just about exposing his lies. It was about proving that I wasn't his victim anymore. I was done being the scapegoat in his twisted game. The next week, I arranged a family meeting. I knew it would be the moment of truth, the moment I would lay everything out on the table, showing them who my father really was. I could feel the weight of it in my bones, but I was ready. I wasn't just going to be the daughter who always looked the other way. I was going to be the woman who exposed the lies. When the day finally arrived, I arrived early, the papers clutched in my hands. The room was tense. Everyone gathered around the table, their faces masks of uncertainty. Herman was there, trying to act like everything was fine. But I wasn't buying it. I couldn't. I know you've all been told a different story, I began, my voice steady. But here's the truth. Everything I've uncovered, the lies, the betrayal, it's all in these documents. I slapped the papers down on the table, and the room went silent. Herman's eyes widened, and for the first time, I saw a crack in his armor. "You can't do this," he spat, standing up. "You don't know what you're talking about." But it was too late. The truth was out, and there was no going back. As I stood there, watching the shock and disbelief spread across the room, a strange sense of peace settled over me. This wasn't the end. This was just the beginning. The aftermath of the family meeting left me exhausted. Some people supported me, but others still clung to Herman's lies. It was a long road ahead, but I wasn't backing down. The fight was just getting started, and I was ready for whatever came next. I knew now that my freedom wasn't just about walking away from my father's lies. It was about taking back control of my life, and no one, least of all him, was going to stop me. The war wasn't over. But for the first time in my life, I felt ready to win. The weight of everything I had learned in the past few weeks hit me as I sat in my apartment, papers scattered around me, each one confirming the worst of what my father had done. The financial deceit, the lies, the years of manipulation, it was all so much to process. But there was no turning back now. I had come this far, and there was no way I was going to stop until I had taken control of my life again. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the wall for a moment, allowing myself a few seconds to breathe. I had already been through the shock, the betrayal, the anger, but now it was different. This wasn't about me being a victim anymore. I was done with that role. The truth was in my hands, and I was finally ready to wield it. The phone buzzed on the table. "Gus." I grabbed it, feeling the familiar mix of anxiety and determination. "Gus," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'm ready." "I know," he replied, his voice calm but urgent. "Meet me at the office in an hour." It's time to make this official. The plan was in motion. There was no going back. Gus's office was quiet when I arrived, the only sound the low hum of the air conditioning. He was already there, sitting at his desk, the papers we'd gathered over the last few days spread out in front of him. A man walked in as I took a seat. He was tall, with a suit that looked like it was made for someone who meant business. "Reggie, this is Robert Fields," Gus said, motioning to the man. "He's the lawyer who's going to help us take this to the next level." Robert smiled, offering a firm handshake. "I've read through everything. We have a strong case here, but we need to move fast." I nodded, my mind racing with 1,000 questions. "What do we do next?" "Next, we file for the restraining order," Robert explained. "We need to hit him where it hurts. The longer we wait, the more he can cover up. It's time to get aggressive." The words hit me hard, but I didn't flinch. For the first time, I wasn't the one running scared. I was taking control, and nothing was going to stop me. The next few days were a blur of phone calls, meetings, and preparations. I barely slept, my mind constantly spinning, planning for what was to come. But no matter how much I prepared, I knew that Herman wasn't going to let this go quietly. I was in the middle of a grocery run when my phone buzzed, a message from a family member. I read it, my stomach sinking. "Your dad's telling everyone you're just trying to ruin the family for money. He says you're only doing this to destroy him." I felt the blood rush from my face as my hands tightened around my phone. This wasn't just an attack on me. This was an attack on everything I'd ever known. He was trying to turn the family against me, painting me as the villain in this story. I called Gus, my voice barely controlled. "He's spreading lies. He's telling everyone I'm just out for money." "We expected this," Gus replied calmly. "He's going to try everything to manipulate you. But don't back down. We have a plan, and it's working. Stick to it." The rage inside me grew, but so did the resolve. I wasn't going to let him win. I wasn't going to let him destroy me or our family anymore. I called a family meeting, knowing that it was time to lay it all out. The lies, the manipulation, the betrayal, everything needed to be exposed. My heart pounded in my chest as I walked into the room, the weight of the moment settling in. Herman was there, his face an unreadable mask. He tried to act like everything was normal, but I could see the flicker of unease in his eyes. "I know what you've been telling everyone," I said, my voice steady. "But the truth is here. I have the evidence." I slammed the papers onto the table. Silence filled the room as everyone's eyes turned to Herman. He looked like he'd been struck. He tried to speak, to deny it, but his words were weak, his defenses crumbling in the face of the truth. "You don't know what you're talking about," he spat, his voice trembling. But I wasn't backing down. Not anymore. "I know exactly what I'm talking about," I said, my voice cutting through the tension in the room. "And now, everyone else will too." The room went silent. Some of my relatives were in shock, others in disbelief, but I saw a flicker of something in their eyes. The truth was sinking in. The aftermath was as I expected. Some people supported me, others still stood by Herman, unable or unwilling to accept what had just been revealed. But it didn't matter. I had done it. I had exposed the lies, and I had taken the first step toward breaking free from the chains my father had wrapped around me for so long. As I stood there, feeling the weight of everything that had just happened, I realized something. The battle wasn't over. In fact, it had only just begun. There was still so much more to do, so many more steps to take, but I was ready for it. I wasn't running anymore. I wasn't hiding. The fight had just begun, and I was going to win. The following days were filled with preparations for the next steps. The legal battle, the media attention, the backlash. It was all coming at me fast, but I wasn't scared anymore. I was ready. The victory felt bittersweet, like a weight lifted from my shoulders, but replaced with something new, something stronger, something more resolute. The truth had been exposed, but there was more to do. I knew that the real fight was just beginning. "I've won the battle," I thought, as I walked away from the confrontation. "But there's a war to be fought, and I'm going to win that too." The night before the final showdown felt like the calm before a storm. Sitting alone in my apartment, I spread out every document, every piece of evidence, each note and recording that had brought me here. Tomorrow was the day I'd face him again, the man who had controlled and manipulated me for as long as I could remember. But this time, I was no longer the scared little girl hoping for his approval. I was prepared for this moment, and I wasn't going to let him take anything else from me. I ran my hands over the papers, each one a testament to the lies he'd woven around our family. The trust he had shattered, the manipulation he had made me endure. I'd done everything he asked, made every sacrifice, and yet here I was, holding the very thing that could destroy him. I dialed the lawyer's number, making sure everything was set for tomorrow. There was no room for error. This was it. "Everything's in place," Robert's voice confirmed. "You're ready. Just remember, once you do this, there's no going back." I nodded, though I was sure he couldn't see me. "I know. I'm not turning back. Tomorrow, it ends." I hung up and sat back in my chair, my mind whirling. I thought about everything that had led me to this point, the pain, the betrayal, and now, finally, the justice. I had always believed that silence was the price I had to pay. That was the lie I had been taught my whole life. But not anymore. Tomorrow, I was going to take control, and nothing would stop me. That night, Herman reached out, of course. I knew he would try something. He was desperate now, and that desperation could only mean one thing: a final attempt to regain control. His message was simple enough. "We need to talk. I never wanted to hurt you. Please, let's fix this. You can still have everything you ever wanted. All I'm asking for is a chance." I stared at the screen, my fingers trembling. It was the same old tactic. He was trying to manipulate me into believing he cared. He didn't care. He had never cared. But I wasn't the same person who had fallen for this before. I called Gus immediately, knowing the next few hours were going to be crucial. "Don't let him sway you," Gus said when I told him. "It's just a final ploy. He knows he's losing control. You've got the upper hand now." I clenched my jaw. I'm not backing down, not now. The next day, I walked into the meeting knowing that my father would try to play it cool, to pretend like everything was fine. But I was prepared. This time, I wasn't the one who was going to break. He greeted me with that same practiced smile, the one that never reached his eyes. He sat down at the table, his hands folded neatly in front of him. Reggie, this isn't you. You're angry, and I get that. But this isn't the way to handle things. Let's talk. I didn't waste time. You've lied to me, manipulated me, and now you've pushed me to the edge. There's no talking anymore, Dad. There's only the truth, and I'm ready to expose you for everything you've done. I slammed the papers down on the table. Everything I had gathered over the months. He didn't flinch, not at first, but I saw the shift. His facade cracked. You don't understand. He started, his voice shaking. You've always misunderstood me, Reggie. This is all for you, for your future. I never wanted to hurt you. But I saw through it. I had learned enough to know when he was lying. No, you didn't want to hurt me. You just wanted to control me. And you've been doing it my whole life. He leaned back, suddenly defensive. This is all a misunderstanding. You don't know the whole story. I did it for the family. I didn't let him finish. The family. You've been lying to the family for years. Taking from us, using us. I'm done with your lies. His face turned red. He slammed his fist on the table. You're being ungrateful. You're throwing it all away for what? Some revenge? I've given you everything. I built this for you. You didn't build it for me, I snapped. You built it for yourself, to keep me in your shadow. I watched him struggle for words. The man who had controlled me with his promises and manipulation was crumbling before my eyes. But it wasn't enough. Not yet. The news started to break. The story hit the press, and within hours, Herman's empire began to unravel. People who had stood by him for years now questioned everything they thought they knew. Partners dropped him, his business associates distanced themselves, and the walls he'd carefully constructed started to fall apart. I watched it all unfold, my emotions torn. Part of me felt vindicated. This was the justice I'd been waiting for. But another part of me felt a deep sadness. This was the family I had known, the life I had lived. And now, it was all gone. But I had done what I needed to do. I couldn't let him keep living his lies. The truth was out, and that was all that mattered. And then Herman fought back, of course. He had always been a master manipulator, and even now, as his empire crumbled, he tried to turn the tables. He started spreading rumors, lying about me to my friends, to my colleagues. He twisted the narrative, painted me as the villain, trying to drag me down with him. I saw the articles, the headlines, my name dragged through the mud. But there was nothing he could do to stop me. I wasn't the person I used to be. His lies didn't affect me anymore. His threats didn't scare me. The more he fought, the more determined I became. Then, I made my final move. I sat down with the press, a calm determination in my voice. I presented the truth, everything I had learned, everything I had uncovered. I spoke about the lies, the deceit, and the manipulation, and I made it clear that I wouldn't back down. For the first time in my life, I was in control. The room was silent when I finished, and for a brief moment, I felt an overwhelming sense of peace. The truth was finally out. Herman's empire was crumbling, his lies exposed, and I had done it. But even as the press picked up the story and the media went wild, I knew this was just the beginning. The battle wasn't over. The war had only begun, and it was mine to win. The truth had come to light, but my fight wasn't over. Herman's fall was just the beginning. The battle against my father had been won, but there were still so many pieces to pick up. The next chapter of my life was only just beginning. The morning light streamed through the blinds of my apartment, casting a soft glow over the pile of papers on the desk in front of me. Today was the day. The day I would finally face my father, once and for all. There would be no more turning back, no more hesitation. I had spent countless nights preparing, gathering evidence, and preparing myself emotionally. Today, I would expose the truth to the world, and to him. I sat quietly, reviewing the file one more time. The weight of everything I had learned pressed down on me. The betrayal, the manipulation, the years of lies, all of it laid bare on those pages. I couldn't help but think of my mother. She had always told me that the truth would come out one day. I had lived so many years wondering when that would happen, and now I knew. It was today. I took a deep breath, pushing aside the remnants of fear that still lingered in the corners of my mind. Today, I wasn't the daughter hoping for approval. I wasn't the person who had silently accepted everything he did. Today, I was taking control. Today, I was going to make him see the truth of his actions. And no matter how hard he tried, there was nothing he could do to stop it. As I prepared myself for the day ahead, I received a message from Herman. My phone buzzed on the counter and I picked it up without thinking twice. His words were meant to shake me, to force me to doubt everything I had been working toward. "Reggie, you don't know what you're doing. You're making a huge mistake. If you expose me, it will destroy everything. Your career, your future. Is this really what you want? Think about the damage you'll cause. You won't be able to undo it." I stared at the screen for a long moment, letting the words sink in. The old Herman was still there, trying to manipulate me with his guilt-tripping, trying to scare me into silence. But it wasn't going to work this time. I typed out a response, my fingers shaking slightly with a mix of frustration and resolve. "No, Dad, I'm done with the lies. This ends today. You won't control me anymore." I hit send and didn't look back. By the time I arrived at the courthouse, the weight of the world seemed to press down on me. This wasn't just a legal battle anymore. This was the battle for my life, for my future, and for everything I had ever believed in. The courtroom was filled with tension, the air thick with anticipation. I could feel the eyes of the world watching, waiting for the truth to be revealed. Herman's legal team was already there, sitting across from me with their smug expressions, clearly confident that they would win this. But I wasn't intimidated. I had the truth on my side, and that was something they couldn't take away from me. The trial began, and I took the stand, steadying my breath. One by one, I presented the evidence, watching as Herman's lies began to unravel before everyone. His defense team tried to discredit me, accusing me of fabricating the evidence, but I stood my ground. I wasn't backing down. I watched as the cracks in his facade widened with each passing moment, the tension in the room escalating as more and more people began to see who he truly was. The media caught wind of the trial, and soon enough, it was everywhere. The headlines screamed of betrayal, lies, and corruption. Herman's carefully built empire began to crumble, and I could feel a mixture of satisfaction and sadness wash over me. For so long, I had wanted to see him pay for what he had done, but now that it was happening, it didn't feel as sweet as I had imagined. His business associates were the first to turn on him. One by one, they distanced themselves, and I saw the foundation he had worked so hard to build start to fall apart. I felt the power of the truth coursing through me, but with it came a deep sadness. This was my father, the man who had raised me. And yet, I didn't recognize him anymore. The man I had once looked up to was nothing but a stranger now, a man whose lies had destroyed everything. As Herman's world collapsed around him, he did what he always did. He fought back. Desperate and furious, he tried to salvage whatever was left of his reputation. He tried bribing reporters, offering money to suppress stories, but it was too late. The truth was out, and nothing could stop it. I watched as his desperation grew. He spread lies about me, trying to turn my friends and colleagues against me. He painted me as the villain, claiming I was trying to destroy the family he had built. But I wasn't scared anymore. He couldn't control me. He couldn't intimidate me. The media backlash only grew stronger. People who had once supported him began speaking out, revealing the truth of what he had done. The walls he had spent years constructing were finally coming down. In the end, it was my final move that sealed his fate. With the help of a whistleblower from his company, I released a final piece of evidence, something that left Herman with no way to escape the consequences of his actions. As the news spread, I felt a strange sense of relief. The truth was finally undeniable. He had no more secrets to hide, no more lies to tell. Everything he had built was now in ruins. Then, the final confrontation came. I stood face to face with him for the last time. The man who had controlled me, manipulated me, and broken me. I watched as his eyes flickered with the same anger and fear I had seen before, but this time, it didn't scare me. He tried to justify his actions, but I didn't let him. I cut through his lies with the force of everything I had learned, everything I had fought for. "You're a stranger to me now," I said, my voice steady and firm. "The person you've become is unrecognizable. I won't let you control me any longer." Herman's face twisted in rage. "You think you've won, but you haven't." This isn't over." But I knew it was. The battle was over. I had won. But as Herman's empire crumbled and the truth emerged, I couldn't help but wonder, what would be left for me now that the battle was over? The storm had passed, but the wreckage still remained. Now I had to figure out what I was going to do with the pieces. The silence in my apartment was deafening. For days, the victory had been celebrated, but it didn't feel like a win. I couldn't help but notice the flood of news stories plastered all over my phone. My father's empire had fallen, and I had exposed the lies. Yet the sense of triumph I thought I'd feel wasn't there. What I felt was emptiness. It should have felt different. I had fought tooth and nail to bring the truth to light, but in the end, it didn't feel like a victory. The world was finally seeing him for what he was, but I couldn't help but feel the weight of the personal cost. His betrayal, his manipulation, had cost me more than just my childhood. It had cost me the trust of people I had once called family. I couldn't escape the constant reminders, calls, messages, congratulations from the world outside, but the inside felt hollow. There was nothing left for me in the life I once knew. Nothing felt right anymore. The next few days were full of phone calls and texts from people I hadn't spoken to in years, congratulating me for taking a stand. It was almost too much to handle. People who had been quiet, who had watched from the sidelines, were now patting me on the back. But the ones I wanted to hear from, the people I once called friends, were the ones gone silent. Slowly, my world started to shrink. The fallout was happening faster than I could process. Calls came in, but there was always a coldness to them. Conversations with people who had once supported my father were now tense, distant. I heard whispers, but it was clear to me. Many of them had chosen their sides, and I wasn't on the side they wanted. I knew I had done the right thing, but I couldn't ignore the emptiness that lingered. Every victory felt like a hollow win when the people you thought you could trust turned their backs on you. The weight of everything I had sacrificed came crashing down as I sat across from my mother. She had been quiet in the weeks since the news broke, and I could see the strain on her face as she walked into the room. Her eyes were tired, like she had been carrying the weight of the world in silence for years. I sat with her at the kitchen table, unsure of what to say. It wasn't easy to talk to her about all of this. We had both been so silent for so long, each of us holding our own pain, our own version of the truth. But now, with everything out in the open, it felt like time to speak. "You did what you had to do, Reggie," she said softly, her voice betraying the pain she still carried. "But it's hard. It's hard to know how to rebuild after all of this." "I know," I whispered, feeling the truth of her words hit me in ways I hadn't expected. I had been so focused on the battle, on exposing my father for who he was, that I hadn't stopped to think about the toll it had taken on her. "You've always been strong," she added, her eyes meeting mine. "I just hope you understand that you didn't have to carry this alone. I've been carrying my own burdens. Maybe it's time we face them together." Her words hit me harder than I expected. I had been so caught up in my fight, I had never realized how much my mother had suffered in silence, how much pain she had been carrying for years. In that moment, a new understanding passed between us, and I felt a sense of healing beginning to take shape, small but significant. Later that evening, I received a message from Herman. I knew it was coming, but it didn't make it any easier. He was trying to make one final attempt at reconciliation, reaching out to me with a hollow apology. "I never meant for it to go this far, Reggie," the message read. "I did what I thought was right. I thought I was protecting us. You have to understand, I was only trying to do what was best." I stared at the screen, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. He wasn't sorry. He was just trying to salvage something from the wreckage he had caused. I knew better than to fall for it. I typed back, my response firm and final. I don't need your apologies. You've done enough. I'm done. I hit send, feeling the weight of those words settle in my chest. There would be no reconciliation. There would be no going back. It wasn't long before the media caught wind of the legal troubles my father was now facing. His empire was crumbling, and it wasn't just the civil suits. He was facing potential criminal charges as well. It was as if everything he had built over the years was coming down in real time, and I could do nothing but watch. The media frenzy that followed his downfall was something I couldn't ignore. The backlash grew stronger with each passing day. His business partners, the ones who had once sworn allegiance to him, began abandoning him one by one. The public turned against him. The media had a field day, exposing every detail of his corrupt practices, his manipulations, and his lies. I felt a sense of vindication as I watched the fall of the man who had been my father. But at the same time, it was bittersweet. This wasn't the father I had known. This wasn't the man I had hoped would change. This was a man broken by his own lies, and that was a painful truth to face. But amid all the destruction, I made a decision, a final decision. It wasn't just about taking down my father. It was about moving forward, about building something for myself that had nothing to do with the past. I started making plans, real plans. I was going to create my own future, one that wasn't built on the broken promises of my past. It was time to carve out a new path for myself. I wanted to help others who had faced the kind of injustice I had. It was time to start my own business, using everything I had learned to make a difference. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was in control. It wasn't going to be easy, and I knew there would be challenges ahead, but I had the strength to face them. This was the beginning of something new. As I planned for my future, I couldn't shake the feeling that something, or someone, was still out there, waiting for me in the shadows, ready to turn my new beginning into another fight. The storm had passed, but the wreckage still remained. Now I had to figure out what I was going to do with the pieces. It had been a month since my father's empire collapsed, and I found myself standing on the edge of a new life. Yet the world I stepped into felt foreign. Sitting in my apartment, the stillness around me was a stark contrast to the whirlwind I had lived through. The newspapers, the news broadcasts, the endless messages congratulating me on exposing my father's lies. Everything had come at me so fast. I picked up an old family photo frame from the side table, my fingers tracing the glass lightly. A picture of me, my mom, and my dad from when I was a child. It felt like a lifetime ago. The face of the man who once smiled at me with pride now seemed so distant, almost unrecognizable. The man I had fought to bring to justice, the man who had shaped my life into something I couldn't have imagined, was gone. And with him, the family I had known. A weight settled over me as I thought about the years I had spent living in that shadow, never questioning, always just trying to survive. But now, I was no longer that person. I couldn't be. The victory didn't taste as sweet as I thought it would. I had received an unexpected letter the day before. It was from my father. I stared at it for hours, the envelope sitting on my kitchen counter as if taunting me. A part of me had been waiting for this moment, hoping it would never come, but here it was. Opening it, I read the words that meant nothing. I never wanted to hurt you, Reggie. I made mistakes, but I was trying to protect us. Please understand. I clenched my jaw, the anger bubbling up once again. He was trying to manipulate me, one last time. After everything he had done, this was the final act. To play the victim. I could feel the old emotions threatening to take hold, resentment, sadness, longing for the father I had never truly had. The letter brought it all rushing back, and for a moment, I was torn. But then I realized what I had to do. I took a deep breath and set the letter down. There was no need to respond. There was nothing left to say. I walked away from the letter, from the past, and decided to close that chapter. No more manipulations, no more guilt. Things began moving forward. My business was taking off. After everything I had been through, I had finally found my footing. Helping others who had been wronged like me had given me a sense of purpose I hadn't known I was missing. The people who reached out to me for support were raw, vulnerable, and in need of someone to understand their pain. And I understood it, perhaps more than anyone else. Seeing the fruits of my labor for the first time felt like I was stepping into something new, something all my own. The victory was no longer about my father or the destruction of his empire. It was about building something that was real, something I could call my own. But just when I thought I had found peace, another revelation came. The news broke just as I had started to feel like I was moving forward. There it was again, the name I had been trying to escape. My father's crimes went deeper than I ever could have imagined. This time, it wasn't just about him. The people I had once trusted, people from my past, were involved. The weight of that betrayal hit me like a freight train. I felt the ground slip from beneath me as the world learned the truth. Those familiar faces, the ones who had stood by me, now stood by him. I felt as though my entire life had been a lie. For a moment, I felt it. The anger, the hurt, the disbelief. I couldn't believe that after everything I'd done, after everything I had fought for, this was the next chapter. More lies, more betrayal. But in the midst of the chaos, I stayed grounded. I had come too far to let it all fall apart now. The world had finally seen my father for who he was, and no amount of new revelations would change that. This time, I wouldn't let him take me down with him. I would keep moving forward. Days passed, and the storm of my father's legal battles grew more intense. Lawsuits piled up. The press tore into him. I couldn't help but feel vindicated, but it was a hollow victory. As my father faced the consequences, I couldn't ignore the toll it had taken on me. The family I had known was shattered. I couldn't undo the past, no matter how much I wanted to, but I could break free. I could make my own future. I walked into a lawyer's office one morning, determined. I want to sever all ties with him, I told the lawyer. The decision was final, and I felt a sense of empowerment as I signed the papers. It was done. For the first time, I felt free. As the weeks went by, I settled into my new life. My business was thriving. I was surrounded by people who believed in me, who saw me for who I was, not the daughter of a man who had ruined everything, but a woman who had the strength to rise above it. I had found peace in my work, in helping others reclaim their lives, just as I had done. But even as I looked at the future with hope, I couldn't shake the feeling that my past was always lurking just behind me, waiting to creep back in. It always had, after all. But for now, I would hold on to the peace I had found, knowing that no matter what, I had built this new life for myself.